So yeah, welcome everybody. As probably you've been following this series, if you want to catch up, they are on YouTube. You can catch up on YouTube on the LBC website. So yeah, you can do that. The sessions, I hope, stand alone, but I also hope that I don't know. I'm looking at sort of death and Buddhist notions of death from different perspectives. So I hope that it adds up to a sort of collage or jigsaw that gives you a bit more of a rounded view. So I think the sessions will sort of support each other. Yesterday, of course, we were looking at, we started looking at a story from the Buddhist time of Kisagotami, who loses her son and then, in a way, sees into the nature of dukkha in conditioned existence. And we also looked at what did we mean by conditioned existence. And she goes for refuge to the Buddha and gains enlightenment through, in a way, giving up on grasping for satisfaction in conditioned existence. It's that grasping that keeps us tied to this round of birth and death and then rebirth. I was thinking, for us in the West, sometimes the idea of rebirth can be quite attractive. Like, oh, I'll get another go to do all the things I didn't manage to do in this life. But in the tradition, in India, where the tradition started, but also all over the Buddhist East, this round of life and death wouldn't be a good thing. It's seen as a perpetual round of looking for fulfillment and never quite getting complete fulfillment. And then there's loss and death and then doing it all again. It's seen not in positive terms. So, of course, the Dharma is about transcending this round. So you might have to make a bit of an imaginative adjustment if you want to come back and do everything that you're still longing to do. It's not quite what Buddhism means. Okay, but today I want to look at the Bardo Tadol, or the Tibetan Book of the Dead, as it's called in the West. And I want to start, in a way, just exploring a little bit of the perspective of this 14th century Tibetan text. The Bardo in Tibetan means in-between state. So the text is talking about the intermediate state between death and rebirth. And it's a text that is looking at guiding those who have died to liberation rather than to rebirth. But it's interesting, in the text, it's not just that the state between death and rebirth is an intermediate state, a bardo. Life is an intermediate state between birth and death. Dreams are seen as an intermediate state between waking consciousness and waking consciousness. Meditation is seen as an intermediate state between ordinary consciousness and ordinary consciousness. There's a meditative consciousness. And death, and then the bardo state after death, and then the point of taking rebirth are all seen as bardos, as intermediate states. And the point is that in any of those states of consciousness, the text is telling us that enlightenment is possible. We could wake up to the way things are. We could snap out of our delusion of duality that says that I'm a fixed and separate real entity in a fixed and separate real world. We've got the opportunity of waking up not just in life, but in dreams and in meditation and at the moment of death and in the period following death. in that bardo that we traditionally think of. And then also at the point where rebirth is happening. So what I thought we'd do is we'll settle down into a sort of a meditative posture and a relaxed state. And then I'm going to read you the root verses of the 6 bardos. And what you get in these root verses is exhortation, quite hard-hitting exhortation to wake up to enlightenment, to our true nature, regardless of whether we're in the waking, ordinary consciousness state, whether we're in the dream state, the meditative state, or the approaching death, or in the intermediate state between death and rebirth, or approaching rebirth. There's an opportunity to wake up. So I'm going to read these teachings, and as I say, it's quite. What are they? They're an exhortation to not slumber and to not waste time, not waste the opportunity of realization. Anyway, so let's see what you make of them. I'm not going to. The language is assuming lots of Dharmic terms. It's archaic language, and don't worry if you don't understand all the terms. See if you can just let yourself listen to the overall mood of the exhortation. So even if you don't understand all the technical terms, I think you'll get something of the flavor of these root verses. They're powerful verses. Okay, so let's settle into our meditative posture. And if you're just sitting on a chair or on the sofa, that's fine. You can just make sure that you're comfortable. And when you're ready, closing your eyes and taking a few deeper breaths. And as you breathe out, see if you can have a sense of letting go of the weight of the body, but also letting go of any areas of tension in the body, any areas of holding on, of gripping in the body. With each out-breath, as if you were breathing a sigh of relief, allowing the body to soften, any areas of tension to soften. And see if you can have a sense of groundedness, the weight of your upper body dropping through the sitting bones, through the legs, through the feet, through the support under you, dropping down into the ground, rooting you to the ground. Calming the body, calming the mind, and opening the heart. The root verses of the 6 bardos. O now, when the bardo of life upon me is dawning, abandoning idleness, there being no idleness in a devotee's life, entering into the reality undistractedly, listening, reflecting, and meditating, carrying on to the path knowledge of the true nature of appearances and of mind, may the Trikaya be realized. Once that the human form has been attained, may there be no time or opportunity in which to idle it away. O now, when the bardo of dreams upon me is dawning, abandoning the inordinate corpse-like sleeping of the sleep of stupidity, may the consciousness undistractedly be kept in its natural state. Comprehending the true nature of dreams, may I train myself in the clear light of miraculous transformation. Acting not like the brutes in slothfulness, may the blending of the practicing of the sleep state and the actual or waking experience be highly valued by me. O now, when the bardo of meditation upon me is dawning, abandoning the whole mass of distractions and illusions, may the mind be kept at rest in endless, undistracted samadhi. May firmness both in the visualizing and in the perfecting stages be obtained. At this time, when meditating one-pointedly, with all other actions put aside, may I not fall under the power of misleading, stupefying passions. O now, when the bardo of the moment of death upon me is dawning, abandoning attraction and craving and weakness for all worldly things, may I be undistracted in the space of the bright enlightening teachings. May I be able to transfuse myself into the heavenly space of the unborn. The hour has come to part with this body composed of flesh and blood. May I know the body to be impermanent and illusory. O now, when the bardo of reality upon me is dawning, abandoning all awe, fear, and terror of all phenomena, may I recognize whatever appears as being my own thought forms. May I know them to be apparitions in the intermediate state. It has been said, there arrives a time when the chief turning point is reached. Fear not the bands of the peaceful and wrathful, who are your own thought forms. O now, when the bardo of taking rebirth upon me is dawning, one-pointedly holding fast to a single wish, may I be able to continue the course of good deeds through repeated effort. May the womb door be closed and revulsion recollected. The hour has come when energy and pure love are needed. May I cast off jealousy and meditate upon the Guru, the Father-Mother. O procrastinating one, who thinks not of the coming of death, devoting yourself to the useless doings of this life, improvident are you in dissipating your great opportunity. Mistaken indeed will your purpose be now, if you return empty-handed from this life. Since the holy Dharma is known to be your true need, will you not devote yourself to the holy Dharma, even now? So I hope you got a bit of a flavour of the urgency that is in those verses, the urgency to practice whatever state of consciousness we're in, sleep, waking state, dream state, the approaching death, the after death, or the taking rebirth state. Whichever state we're in, there's an opportunity to realize what's really going on, to liberate ourselves from the delusions. And so that's they're called the root verses of the Bardo Thodol, which is in English it's been translated as the Tibetan Book of the Dead. This Tibetan Book of the Dead has become more famous in the West than it is in Tibet. It was translated not very accurately, but very poetically by Evans Wentz initially. And it just became very famous. It became very well known. But what I want to emphasize is that in the tradition, the Tibetan tradition, there isn't one sort of definitive way of thinking about what happens in the after-death state. This is one model that comes in this book. In early Buddhism, the Buddha didn't talk very much about what happens in the after-death state, but he did say that there was a linking consciousness between death and rebirth. Something continued, and then was took form again in the next birth. So when we go into looking at what does the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Bardo Thodol, say about what happens after death, I wouldn't necessarily take it literally. I'd take it as a model with some particular principles, because it comes from, it's attributed to a Tibetan master called Karma Lingpa, a 14th century Tibetan master. But traditionally, he is said to have received these teachings from Padmasambhava. So it's medieval Tibet that we're talking about. And medieval Tibet, and in the Tibetan culture still, is it's a magical culture. And it would have, before Buddhism was introduced into Tibet, there would have been magical rituals to help the dead move on. And some of those rituals would have, I guess, be based in fear of ghosts. So you don't want the dead lingering as ghosts and then haunting the place. You want them to move on, and you want to help them move on. So there would have been magical rituals to do with helping the dead move on, but also in terms of protecting the living. And then Buddhism came into Tibet in the 8th century, and the tradition of rebirth came with Buddhism. And eventually you get a text like the Bardo Thodol, which is combining this kind of magical culture with Buddhist ideas. So what I'm trying to say is that if we understand the sort of origins, the historical origins of the text, it might help us see that it's one culture's perspective on what happens after death. It's not even the whole of the Buddhist culture's perspective. It's not even the whole of Tibetan Buddhists' perspective. It's a very specific text. But nevertheless, I think it's got some really interesting and valuable principles. So the verses that I've just read, even if we're not going to have time to unpack all the technical terms, but I think it's just really interesting that those verses don't privilege one state of consciousness over the others. What they're saying is that waking consciousness is as real and as unreal as dream consciousness, as meditative consciousness, as the consciousness that is there at the time of death and in the after-death state, and then at the point of rebirth. None of those is seen as more real. And I think that's really interesting, because that is counter, I think, to our Western assumptions, where waking life is real and waking consciousness is revealing the world as it truly is. Dream consciousness is obviously not as real. Dreams happen and we experience them. And they even leave a lingering, perfuming effect on our minds. Sometimes dreams can be very significant, but we tend to assume, oh yeah, that's not so real, as waking life is. We tend to assume that. Whereas this worldview is very different. It's saying, look, all of those states of consciousness are equally real and equally unreal. None of them are absolutely real. The world that we experience when we're wide awake is still a constructed world. It's still a world that is coming to us through the senses and through the mind. It's a construction. The sense experiences, the sounds, the colors, the smells, the tastes, the touch sensations, as well as any images in the mind or stories in the mind, they're sense experiences. They're not necessarily how things are objectively out there in reality. That's one of the sort of key sort of Buddhist teachings, that the world is not as it appears to be. We have appearances, and appearances definitely arise, and they have an effect. But appearances don't need to imply reality. Just as in a dream, appearances arise, and when you're in the dream, it feels like it's very real. It's definitely very real. My mother was in my dream last night, I think. I'm not completely sure I remember it, but I meant to remember it for this evening and I've forgotten it. But at the time, it was very real, as dreams are. And if somebody was to sort of, in the dream, unless you're lucidly dreaming, you don't know that it's a dream reality. It's just your experience. When you wake up, you know that the dream was only relatively real. Well, waking consciousness is analogous to that. It's not, of course, the same, but it's analogous to that, in that if we woke up from waking consciousness, ordinary waking consciousness, into enlightened consciousness, then this waking, ordinary, unenlightened state would be seen as only relatively real, just like a dream is relatively real. But then it disappears and leaves just a perfuming sense. But there's nothing substantial you can grasp. It's gone. Well, the Buddha said this life is like that. When we come to the end of this life, it will feel like it's been a dream. And actually, even when we're in it, it looks like it's so substantial, so solid, so real. But that's just an appearance. That's just an appearance because it's sort of all embracing. Because I don't know if I can explain this properly. It's like it's not unlike the film The Matrix. You know, we're in this sort of constructed world. The body that we have is part of that constructed world. And because the body is part of that constructed world, we assume that it's all real, completely reality, that it's not constructed. We assume that it's objective. Unlike the Matrix, though, in the Matrix, when Neo wakes up from the delusion of the Matrix, he finds himself, he recognizes that it was a constructed world, but he finds himself in the real world, which is hellish and awful. Well, that's not what the Buddha taught. The Buddha taught that when you wake up from this constructed world, you're completely liberated into an expansive freedom, which is also blissful and is also of the nature of love. You see things as they are, and then you feel this connection with all life. You have this empathic resonance with all life because you realize that everybody is instead of being separate beings, they're part of the same constructed world. And in a sense, there's no separation. So that's a very different worldview to our normal worldview. And I think it's worth pondering over. It's the sort of reflection which, if you take deep enough, will potentially lead to insight. It's the sort of reflection that is encouraged in those root verses. And insight isn't just an intellectual understanding, although it does require intellectual clarity in terms of some degree of understanding the constructed nature of reality, or of our ordinary waking reality. It does require some intellectual understanding, but it's a heart realization. It's a gut realization. It's a total body realization. And then there's freedom. Because what happens is, with that realization, with the penny dropping into the depths of our consciousness, into the depths of our being, not just on the surface intellect level, into our very instincts. When that happens, there's a sort of letting go. Well, what happens is said to happen anyway, is that we let go of the gripping to this constructed world, including a gripping to the very nature of what we think we are. We realize that the body is part of this constructed world, and that death doesn't mean what we thought it meant. It's not the end. So there's a letting go at a very, very visceral level, as well as a sort of heart level. And there's an opening up to what lies beyond this constructed world. So that's really important as well. Kissa Gotami yesterday, she didn't just let go of conditioned existence, she opened up to what the Buddha was pointing at, the world that lies beyond conditioned existence. Maybe the world is a wrong way of putting it, because the world implies, the world of enlightenment implies a place, but it's not a place in the sense that it's somewhere in space. But nor is it just a state of mind somehow inside me, like a psychological state. We don't have concepts for the enlightened mind, because it's said to be beyond the notion of inside and outside. It's said to be beyond the very notions of time and space. So you can't even talk about it as a thing, the enlightened mind. All you can say is there is a release from the delusion and the dukkha, the suffering that comes from the delusion of being in this constructed reality and not recognizing its true nature. So what the Bardo Tadol then says is that at the moment of death, there is a real opportunity to recognize the true nature of reality, beyond the dualism of time and space, beyond the duality of subject and object. It's said that at the moment of death, reality flashes upon us, upon our consciousness. And it's described as a brilliant light, the clear light of reality flashes upon us. It's said, if you can recognize that clear light of reality at that moment, at the death of the body, if you can recognize it, you become instantly enlightened. You enter into that light, and you're enlightened. There's liberation at the point of death. But if you're here like me now, and you're not enlightened like me, like I'm not enlightened, then that means that last time round we didn't recognize that. We missed the opportunity of the clear light. We missed it. And the reason that we might have missed it is that it's very, very difficult to open up to it. It's said to be overwhelming. And at death, our consciousness is said to be really confused, like bewildered. What is happening to me? It's a perplexing, confusing, bewildered state of being not associated with the physical body anymore. And that is completely bewildering. And yet, there's consciousness. It's said that there's a mind-made body, a manumaya kaya, so it's not that there's no body, but it's not a physical body, it's a mind-made body that the consciousness is sort of associated with after the death of the physical body. But the physical senses dropping away with the body, it's such a bewildering state that we're in a state of confusion, and we miss the opportunity of the clear light of reality, which shines forth sometimes very, very briefly, like a momentary thing. It's said that for some people, it lasts longer. It lasts longer. And I guess what's said is that in this life, if you're used to, well, if you've had an experience of that clear light in this life, through Dharma practice, if you've had a glimpse of the transcendental, of the enlightened mind, or even a glimpse of it, then after death, you're more likely to recognize it. It won't be so overwhelming. Maybe it will be, but it won't be so unfamiliar. We'll recognize it. So part of what we're doing in Buddhist practice is preparing for death. Bhante has this aphorism that says death is a state of enforced meditation. And if we were completely unfamiliar with meditation, and you were thrust into this state of mind where the senses have fallen away, there's no physical sensation. If you're unfamiliar with that, you're going to be really bewildered. If you're familiar with meditation, then maybe the after-death state won't be so unfamiliar. And in particular, if we've had a glimpse of the clear light while we're still alive, then there's a real opportunity of recognizing it after death. And the clear light is our own true nature. It's not like a theistic tradition would say you'll meet God, although it's tempting to sometimes use that sort of language. Buddhism saying God is a concept still in the dualistic framework of me and you, apart from it's me and God, or you and God. God is still a being. And as long as God is conceived of as a being, that's still in the world of delusion, in the world of dualism. So this clear light of absolute reality of things as they really are is neither outside of us nor inside of us. It's sort of the light of reality, you could say, is our own true nature. It's the truest nature of who we already are. We're part of it. So all distinctions of duality are transcended. That's why it's so difficult to talk about. We can only talk in language that is dualistic. But practice is part of preparation for death. That's partly what we're doing. And the opportunity for waking up to enlightenment is there in life. But at the moment of death, what happens is that the constructed nature of our experience falls apart. It falls apart. So what we assumed was so solid, so real, like the body and an objective world, which is just as it appears, all of that falls apart. And when it falls apart, there's a chance to open to how things are. In life, most of our lifetime is spent busily shoring up and securing that constructed world for fear that it will fall apart. It's like our egotism is a defense against reality. It's a rearguard defense against the way things are. We can't stand the notion that things might be so expansive that there's no real sense of separation. What we do is we identify with the body and with our unenlightened consciousness, and then we shore up a defense against reality by constructing a world. So for example, this is a sort of easy example of seeing how we construct the world. Think about who you are. How do you identify yourself? If somebody asks you to identify your identity, how would you describe yourself? And, well, what are the typical things that people... I can't ask you to talk, unfortunately. So what are the typical things? People might say, I'm a human being. People might say they're a particular gender or not a gender. They might say they're from a particular racial or cultural background. They might say more psychologically that they're an introvert or an extrovert if asked to describe their identity. They might say, they might identify with a particular job or career. I'm a writer, I'm an artist, I'm a computer programmer, I'm a lawyer, whatever it is. We might identify with our relationships. So I'm a father, or I'm a mother, or I'm a sister, or a brother, or son, or a daughter, or husband, or a wife, or they might be ways of shoring up our identity. But hopefully it doesn't take much reflection to see that all of those are constructions. Reality doesn't come with, you don't come with a label saying lawyer when you're born or something. That's a constructed identity. All of our identity is constructed. Well, Buddhism says everything is constructed, not just our identity in the way that I've talked about, but our very sense experience is a construct. It comes to us, presents itself to us as if there's a real me in here and a real world out there. When that construction falls apart at death, there's an opportunity for awakening. But we don't have to wait until death. Buddhism is a systematic practice in deconstructing the delusions, the constructed reality. It's a systematic practice in undoing those constructions. That's what the Buddhist path is leading to, is an undoing of those constructions, and then the possibility of opening up to another dimension of consciousness, which is also the true nature of how things are. Okay, let me pause there, because I could talk for longer, but there won't be any time for questions. So let's see if you've got any questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. It's almost like I'm at the edge of what I understand, and also at the edge of what can be said. So we'll see how we get on. So are there any questions, Seb?
Yes. So Anne has asked, is a stream entrant reborn as one or become one during a lifetime? Having known one, are they free of personality flaws, unskillfulness, and cravings?
Oh dear, that's a lot of questions, Anne, but I'll give it a go. So stream entrant is a term for somebody. It's a model that's used in early Buddhism that the Buddha talked about. A stream entrant is a model is a term for somebody who has had enough of a glimpse of enlightenment to never fall back from the path. They'll never be able to completely forget it. They'll always, even if they don't try to practice the Dharma, from then on in, it's like the Dharma will work through them and eventually lead them to full enlightenment. So they're said to be irreversible on the path. They've entered the stream of the Dharma, and the current of the Dharma will then carry them all the way to enlightenment. So it's said to be a very, very significant staging post on the way to enlightenment. But traditionally, a stream entrant may gain full enlightenment in the very lifetime that they gain stream entry, but they may not. It may take them up to 7 lifetimes to gain enlightenment. The Buddha said it was a maximum of 7 lifetimes to gain enlightenment. That magic number again, 7, that mythical number again, 7. So a stream entrant is said to be guaranteed enlightenment in a maximum number of 7 lifetimes. Even if they sit around watching Netflix all day in every lifetime, the Dharma will work through them and they'll gain enlightenment. They'll find themselves practicing the Dharma. They'll find themselves in conditions where the Dharma is there. So Bhante says that stream entry is very, very possible for any serious practitioner in this lifetime. Full enlightenment is perhaps a very, very lofty ideal, but stream entry, he thinks, is very possible. In our tradition, though, we don't, Bhante never did, and we don't in Triratna try to calibrate our experience against that model or any other model. So we don't have people going around saying, oh yeah, I'm a stream entrant. If they do, it's a bit dodgy because, well, for a start, if they really have seen a glimpse of the constructed nature of ego, then I'm a stream entrant doesn't make sense as a word, as a sentence. It can't become part of your ego identity. And if it does, you're probably not a stream entrant, or you've got mixed up somewhere. Also, it's possible to think you're further along the path than you are. So it's possible to sometimes think, oh, this is it, I've got it, I see. And then you declare to the world, I'm a stream entrant, and and then you find yourself back in your rather negative mental states, acting unskillfully or so forth. So then it's just embarrassing. So in our tradition, so Anne was saying, do I know any stream entrants? I was there when Bhante was asked, are you a stream entrant, Bhante, or are you further along than a stream entrant? And he just said, he refuses to go there. He just says, that's not for me to say. That's not for me to say. The thing with a stream entrant is that they're not perfect. They're quite a long way from perfect enlightenment. It's said that although they've had a glimpse of enlightenment that's irreversible, there is still craving and hatred in them that is undiminished. I mean, they haven't even weakened their craving and hatred. So craving and hatred goes really, really deep. You can have a glimpse of enlightenment, more than a glimpse of enlightenment, and still be self-centered or have craving and hatred. But it's said that a stream entrant won't act grossly unskillfully, and if they do, they'll confess it. They'll confess their unskillfulness, but they're not beyond unskillfulness. And they do have craving and aversion. If you have craving, you can have aversion. Okay, so I don't know, does that help, Anne? Good. It's said that the next stage of enlightenment is a once returner. So a once returner has only one life left, and they'll gain full enlightenment. And that might not be in the human realm. A non-returner is the next stage, which is what? There's no, they're going to gain enlightenment in that life or straight after death. They won't have to come back. And then there's full and perfect. There's arahantship, which is enlightenment, as the Buddha talked about it. So there's stages of it, degrees of enlightenment. It's not a sort of clear-cut thing. There's a path of enlightenment. Yeah. Okay, let's have another.
Okay. Kenya Silva was asked, why is this truth so difficult to access consciously? If we are part of this truth ultimately, should we understand that we are meant to be in this quest?
That's really good, Kenya Silva. Thank you for asking that. Why is this truth so difficult to access consciously? If we are part of this truth ultimately, should we understand that we are meant to be part of this quest? I think there are two ways to answer your question. There's a sort of scientific Western way of answering, and there's a traditional Buddhist way of answering. So from a scientific Western perspective, you could say that evolution has bred into us over millions of years this survival instinct, and that survival instinct is connected with the sense of self being a separate entity. It goes very, very deep. Because if we didn't have a sense of self as a separate entity and the instinct to survive and protect, we'd have been eaten. Do you see what I mean? So from an evolutionary perspective, a biological perspective, the fact that we've got this delusion has been an advantage. It's got us to this point. But from a Buddhist perspective, it's still based on a delusion. Yes, we're a very evolved animal, but that's still based on a delusion, and there's further to go. From a Dharmic perspective, a more traditional Dharmic perspective, it's said that over countless lifetimes, we've had this delusion of a fixed and separate world and a fixed and separate me in a fixed and separate world. And we've carried over the habit from those lifetimes. And we've also acted unskillfully based on our self-centeredness. So the karmic forces from lifetimes and lifetimes and the delusion from lifetimes and lifetimes is now very, very deep in us. This tendency to think of ourselves as fixed and separate in an objective world, and to then act on the basis of that to protect that sense of identity is very, very deep in us because of countless lifetimes. So what the Buddha taught is that this round of delusion, it doesn't have a beginning. It's always been there. Samsara has always been there. And because we've got self-consciousness, we've got the capacity as human beings, if self-consciousness is functioning in a normal way in us, we've got the capacity to look at ourselves, to question our constructed identities. We've got the capacity to be aware that we're aware. Consciousness can become self-consciousness. So we can think about ourselves, reflect on our own experience, and examine what it is to be conscious. That's self-consciousness. And it's because of that capacity that it's possible to break out of the delusion and wake up to how things really are, to break free. And the path is just a systematic way of doing that. It's method. The Buddha's just giving us method, and the Buddhist tradition is just giving us more and more methods. And I like this word quest, because I think this quest is it's sort of our birthright. We can keep going round and round in deluded states for lifetime after lifetime, but consciousness inherently, something in our consciousness wants to be free, wants to be free. That's why we're never completely satisfied with everything that ordinary life conditioned existence offers us. We think that if we, I don't know, won the lottery, had the holiday home, had the perfect partner, had the beautiful body, had youth, health, money, everything, that we would be completely fulfilled. But actually, if you've ever sort of got what you think you want, you'll probably have realized that there's an aspect of the heart mind, that sort of says, is that it? Was that it? Is that what life is? I've got everything. Is that it? Because there's a part of our consciousness that will only be satisfied with complete freedom, with enlightenment. That's why this quest is innate in us. And what's tragic is that everybody has that. Everybody has a sense that they want to be completely fulfilled, but we look for fulfillment and satisfaction in the wrong places, and we cover over this knowledge that it doesn't quite work. We cover that over, and we sort of we forget it deliberately, it seems sometimes, and we just keep going, and we make the best of life. And sometimes life is sort of okay, and we think, okay, well, it wasn't too bad, you know. And sometimes life is dreadful, hellish, but we think that we can't do anything about it. Actually, we can, because consciousness has in it there's something of enlightenment already in us. That's another way of putting it. There's something of the nature of enlightenment in our heart mind, in the deepest sense. And what Buddhism's saying is discover it and allow it out, allow it to unfold. Yeah. So this quest is innate. That's why, I don't know about you, but so many people come to the Dharma and say they knew it already. They know this. Yeah, it speaks to the deepest part of us if you listen. And meditation is a way, well, ethics, first of all, is a way of purifying our self-centeredness. Acting more generously, more kindly, is a way of loosening the grip of the delusion of self, because we act from empathy with others. Then meditation allows the consciousness to calm down and gives us the opportunity to examine what's really underneath all that constructed world. And then if you take these dharmic reflections into meditation, there's the possibility of insight, of realization. And then when you have a glimpse of realization, one of the characters of it is that you know it's true. It's undeniably true. It's just true. But then the challenge is, how do I live by that truth? Because what happens is that you have both a glimpse of the truth, but you also have your ordinary egotistic, unenlightened mind wanting to be secure and happy and, grasping. So then the path becomes about transforming more and more of yourself in accordance with the truth. Yeah. So I'm sorry I've taken so long answering those two questions. They're really good questions. And I'm sorry not to be able to answer more of your questions. Tomorrow, I want to continue looking at the Bardo Tadol, the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And what I want to look at is what happens if you miss the opportunity of that clear light, because it's not the end of the story, that flashing of that clear light of truth. If you don't recognize it as your own true nature, as reality itself, what then happens in the Bardo? And there are more opportunities that present themselves. So I'll try looking at them tomorrow and try carrying on answering some of these very, very profound questions. I'd encourage you in between times, between now and tomorrow, to look at how you identify yourself and what you identify with as a person. and see if you can, in a way, make a list of all the ways that you think of yourself as a separate person, as a being, as an identity, a me. And see if you can reflect on the fact that they're constructed. There's some truth to them. If you're a lawyer or a teacher, yeah, that has a relative truth, but it's only a relative truth. Reality doesn't have such construct. It doesn't know of teachers and lawyers, or it doesn't even know of gender. It doesn't know of race. It doesn't know of... Reality is much more open than that. So see if you can dwell on that a bit. And then tomorrow we'll pick up from here now. So I want to just remind you a couple of things. Parinirvana Day is coming up on, well, our celebration at the LBC. Parinirvana Day, traditionally, like all Buddhist festivals, is on the full moon. I don't know when the actual full moon day of February is. Maybe somebody can post it in the chat. But we'll be marking it on Sunday. And there's an opportunity to do a ritual for people who have died in the past year. So Seb and David are just going to post some instructions in the chat. So if you want to participate in that ritual and send a photograph of the person that's died, what we'll have is all the photographs will be scanned in and will appear on the screen as we do the metta bhavana, and their names will be read out. So we'll be sending metta collectively to the dead. Very beautiful, powerful practice. If you want to participate in that, there's instructions as how to do that. There's also, what else is there to say? Oh yeah, dana. Do give. Seb and David will post a link. If you can give some money to the LBC, I mean, we keep asking for dana, and you do keep giving, and many of you will have given and given and given, and I'm just going to say, please give some more. And, well, for obvious reasons, the LBC, like all centres in Triratna, need money. And if you can spare some money, it really, we have to keep going, don't we? We have to keep going. For me, sort of trying to understand these truths myself and then trying to communicate them to others in the quest for liberation is the most important thing that we can be doing. And if you can support the LBC to do more of that, then I think that's really good. I think it will be money well spent, not just for yourself, but for the people that haven't yet heard about the Dharma. We're trying to reach out to more and more people, and the money will be well spent. It's used for all our Dharma activities. I don't get paid anything. All the teachers are volunteers. The money goes to helping spread the Dharma. So if you can do that, please do give. And I'll see you, hopefully I'll see you tomorrow. Look at these constructed identities. If you have any dreams tonight, well, see if you can wake up in your dreams to the nature of reality, to the nature of the dream state. See if you can do that. And if you can't do that, when you wake up from the dream back into your ordinary waking state, reflect on the dream nature of the dream, the dreamlike nature of the dream, and see if you can start to see that it's all dreamlike. See you tomorrow. Let's unmute and say goodbye. Oh, we can't.